Hello YouTubers, this channel is all about RV living, traveling, and do-it-yourself projects. Please hit the subscribe button below. Hello tubers, I wanted to do this video starting off with the solar. There's a lot of videos out there on off-grid solar, and most of them get into the mechanics, the equipment, and I wanted to give you a little bit more insight on the theory, how the system actually works, how it works together with the different equipment, and then in future videos I will get into specifics of each component of the solar. But to be successful, straight off the bat, the more knowledge that you have, the more videos you go out and watch, and you get comfortable understanding what it really takes to produce the power, you're going to be a lot better off, and you're going to save yourself a lot of money. So those out there that have already got a system, you actually have an advantage. If it's not, the system isn't performing in the manner you thought it would, you can compare your numbers to some numbers that I have got here and understand, you know, why your system maybe isn't performing the way you wanted it to perform. So let's take some look at some numbers. This first graph we're looking at here is for lead acid batteries, and typically that's what people are using. If you're using a 24-volt battery, these numbers on the far left would be multiplied by 2. The thing, and the reason I'm showing you this graph is that I want you to look here at the charge state. A lot of people get the charge state and the capacity confused. The capacity of a battery at full charge is a variable that changes with temperature and with time use of the battery. The capacity, the more use the battery gets, the less capacity it holds. But assuming the battery is full and it's a new battery, typically you will charge a battery to 14 volts and the charge will kick off, and after about 2 hours of rest it will come down to around 13.6. Then you ask why these start below that, because these are the voltage drop you'll get at these different loads that you apply to the battery. So at a 0.05 C rating, it's about 10 amps for a 12 volt battery. The voltage drop would be down to about 12.7. But what's important here is where this graph hits the 12. That 12 volts is typically your 50% usage of the battery, and you don't typically want to go below 12 volts. So a 0.05 capacity discharge of your battery, you should stop discharging it in about 10 hours. It'll give you about 10 hours worth of power. Notice that that 10 hours is right at the 50% usage of the battery, and that calculation is real close to what people typically say, that a 200 amp hour battery that's got 2,400 amp hours stored in it, you'll get about half of that power in a lead acid battery. So 1200 watts is half. But what's interesting to look at is as your loads go up, your actual power you get goes down. So when you look at the 0.2 C curve, you notice that curve hits the graph, the 12 volt on the graph, at about 1 hour 75 minutes. And at 0.2 C, it's pulling 40 amps from the 12 volt battery It's burning 480 watts, but it only can do it for 1.7 hours. So at that load level, you don't get near half the rating out of the battery. You only get 840 amp hours out of the battery. And if you go down to the 0.5C, which is equivalent to a microwave, anything pulling a kilowatt, a little bit more than a kilowatt, the 12-volt battery takes 100 amps from the battery, and it's burning 1200 watts per hour, and you only can pull that for 18 minutes. And when you do, you're only pulling 360 watts. So that's well below the 1200 watts, half of the capacity, but that is all that battery can give you. That should show you that at different loads, you can calculate the actual power that you got available to you. It's not, you can't just say it's half of what the battery capacity is in a lead acid battery. You really got to go to this chart and calculate it that way, because if you don't, in real life, you'll find out real quick you don't have the 1200 amp hours that you thought you had. This next chart we're looking at here is a relationship with usage management in a solar system. The charge state on the left, you really can't expect to get anything from the 14 down to 13.7. As soon as it stops charging and the battery goes to rest, it's actually charged at 13.7. What's important, and no one ever talks about in designing solar, is your usage. If you'll notice over to the right, it says 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. no charge. So when you're calculating your daily usage, you also need to consider how much power you're using during the non-power producing hours of the day. Because what happens is, if you use most of your power at night, then when you wake up in the morning, the battery level is at such a state, it's trying to catch up all day long. Whereas if you got enough capacity where the battery is, when you wake up in the morning, is at 13.5, 13.4, you're not going to cycle the battery near as much, because when the solar panels come on and start producing power, it's going to be replenishing the power that you used. Plus, any power you use during that time it's producing power, it's going to offset what you're actually pulling out of the battery. And if you got 300 watts coming in from the solar panels and you're using less than 300 watts, you're actually not using the battery. You're using the power directly from the solar panels. And this is critical in a healthy system. You want to manage your power where the power you use in the off producing hours is minimal. For example, in my system, when I wake up my system charges to 28 volts. But when I wake up in the morning and I put on coffee, I always check the voltage on the battery, and it's never below 7.6, 7.7. Time I make coffee, I'm down to 27.5, and a few hours later, the sun has come on, and it's replenishing that the refrigerator took over the night and any entertainment. But in my usage, the only power that gets used after the sun goes down is I use a little bit of power for lighting, but most of my power that I use is for refrigeration. And that's the reason you need to know how much power your refrigerator uses. Because say your battery is fully charged, the charge state is full, when the sun goes down, you need to know what that charge rate of the battery is up to the point where the sun comes back up, because that power isn't the battery starts at that point. And as you see, if if your charge rate stays up in the top portion of the battery, and then the solar panel comes on and starts producing power, you're only cycling the battery a very low percentage compared to if you had done all your phone charging, your laptop charging, or cooking after sundown hours. The battery is at a state starting in the morning where it's in catch-up mode, and it's had to cycle all the way down before it gets the cycle up. That's the reason it's critical to increase the capacity to 3 days worth, that your cycle window, the smaller you can make your cycle window, the longer the battery is going to last, and you actually can use more power than you planned for, because all the time the battery is full, the solar panels are not putting out any power. So if you're charging your laptops, all of your items that you use at night, if you charge them to the daylight hours, that power isn't coming from your battery, it's coming from your solar panel. So this is all what you should consider when designing your system, especially your battery, that you have the capacity to maximize the efficiency to the point where you're not cycling the battery but a very small percentage of the capacity of the battery. Now we're going to look at next at the chart for the 18650 batteries, and we'll close this thing out. Finally, this is the discharge chart for the 18650 cells. These are Panasonic chart here, but it's a 2000 milliamp hour battery chart, and all the ones I looked at look very similar. But what's important to note is the voltage drop on the lithium ion 18650 batteries. Now there's a lot of different chemistries used out there, but typically the voltage drop on these does not occur until about 3.4 volts. And if you look on the chart over to the right, I've calculated what that means. A 3.4 volt on my battery means that my total battery is 23.8 volts. I do not use my battery below 25 volts. In fact, my battery operates in the range of 28 down to 26.95. Rarely does my battery ever get into below 27 volts. So my cycle is very short, and this battery should last a lifetime. The hardest thing on lithium ion batteries is charging them above 4 volts to the full 4.2 volts. If you've read anything about the Tesla cars, that's the reason they don't like the fast, they recommend 70% of the life of the Tesla cars to charge them at 70% capacity at slow charge. Using the solar to charge them, you're going to get the slow charge, but since I am not charging mine but up to the 4 volts per cell, these batteries should last forever. Even in all the studies that I found, the degradation of the battery after 15 years is only 15%, and that's quite remarkable. So if you take a look at this graph, compare it to the lead acid graph, it's like two different technologies, which it is. But the reason I say the lithium battery is the battery of choice for storage, hands down. So please put any comments or questions you have about this. I am putting all this information together. It's going to be in a new playlist on the channel, but I'm trying to get all the information together and all my thoughts together to put these together. So please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and hit the like button if you like it. And thanks again for visiting the RV-PowerWall channel. Thank you. Bye-bye.